Marty Schiff on the Fish Bowl. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you swim in the bowl with me.
It's great to be back in the bowl, Sam. This is my second time.
Yeah. Now, a little birdie told me that you are in the process of completing your master's.
Well, I'm starting my master's.
Your master's.
Yeah, I never went back and got my master's. I got my BA at Point Park, and then I went back went right out to Hollywood. So in those days, I wasn't really thinking much about being a teacher and going back into education. But now, since I'm back at Point Park teaching, I thought it would be good to have my master's. So yeah, I'm going back to get my MFA in creative writing.
Awesome. Any projects in the works?
I've always got projects in the works, and a couple of pitches out there, doing mostly distribution these days. So we take something that other people have produced and we get it on the air. That's what we do mostly at my company. So yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about your work with George.
Mm-hmm.
Saw Creepshow and Night Riders.
Right.
Now, at the end of Creepshow, it's you and Tom are the ones who find the comic book.
Correct.
And you also did lighting for the film.
I did. I worked on the all the time when the lights changed colors in the film. And we were shooting Creepshow in 1981, and it was the days before digital effects and things like that. So we did most of the lighting changes were done by hand, and I ran theatrical lighting boards just like I would in theater. And with my experience in working in theater and working in lighting in theater, Nikki Mastandria, who was the key grip, asked me if I would come in and do that for the film. So I did. If you look at the credits in the film, under the grip credits, there's Moonbaby Schiff. You won't see Marty Schiff. You'll see Moonbaby, because as an actor I was Marty Schiff, and then to separate it, they used my nickname, which was Moonbaby, for my grip credit. So yeah.
Awesome. Now we were talking, and I happen to have a certain someone's desk, which is George Romero, and on that desk I'm in the process of trying to develop Creepshow into a TV series.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, that there's a lot of throwbacks to the original Creepshow and Creepshow 2 that I'm trying to incorporate in bringing the show back.
Okay.
Like, for instance, the cockroach segment.
Yeah.
In the first one, I'm working on developing an episode called Mr. Creep, and it's basically about a cockroach monster that can assume the possess bodies and cover it in cockroaches and whatnot.
Right.
And I have to say that Creepshow has had a huge impact on that, and I was wondering, can you give any insights on the effects that were used on the film?
Well, yeah. The cockroaches in particular, they were real cockroaches, and we had roach handlers that went down to Trinidad and went into a bat cave and got, I forget how many thousands, something like 10 or 20,000 of these giant cockroaches. And when I was a kid and would go to Florida in the summers, we called them palmetto bugs, but I don't know what their real technical name was. But they were these cockroaches. They were giant cockroaches. They were like the size of a dachshund, And so they had their own trailer. And we basically, what we did was we would take the cockroaches and we built a set that was basically foam core, and then we put Vaseline around the edges of the set, and you had to wear special suits to go in and out of that particular set. And we tried to keep it as tight as we could so the cockroaches couldn't escape. At the end of Creepshow, we had to destroy the cockroaches, basically. So the cockroaches had their own trailer, and basically what happened at the end of the shoot, they basically nuked the trailer. They destroyed the cockroaches. But I understand to this day they can still. I think it's a Siemens corporation building now that occasionally they see a giant cockroach walking around out there. So they have the other effects that were, for like when Galen and when Galen was drowning and when Ted Danson were drowning, we actually built a giant tank in the studio, and that was all done in studio in a water tank. And that was actually pretty interesting to work on that stuff too. It was pretty neat. So that was all done in a soundstage with a giant plexi water tank, and that's how we did the underwater sequences for that. The other stuff was done, like Fluffy and the meteorite, and when Stephen King as Geordie Verrill turned green. All that stuff was done practical. Those were done by hand back in the day. So. It was kind of neat to work on those back in those days before CGI, when everything was done by hand, and that's the way Creepshow was done. Yeah.
Right. And, I have to say that there's something to be said about practical effects versus CG. It's not that I'm dissing CG, but practical brings a certain element to...
Well, it brings a certain reality to it because, it's closer to reality than a CGI is. Although, I have to say that, the technology is getting better and better and better and better, and it's really hard to tell CGI these days. Early CGI, you could tell, but now it's really becoming smooth. It's getting better and better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your experience working with George.
Yep.
Any stories or anything?
Too many for now. But I worked with George on 3 films. I worked with him on Dawn of the Dead, Creepshow, and Night Riders. Then I also worked on a series called George Romero Presents Dead Time Stories as a producer. It's always a treat to work with George. A gentleman, a lot of fun, maybe one of the funniest people I've ever worked with, and just very insightful, very bright. And I didn't go to school for filmmaking. I went to school for theater, and I really learned my filmmaking technique and approach by watching George and Mike Gornick and watching those guys work on the set of Dawn of the Dead, Creepshow, and Night Riders. That's really where I got my education. Yeah.
Awesome. So, last question. What are some of your favorite films?
Oh, wow. More recently, I love things like Lost in Translation. I was a fan of Fight Club early, and of course, I love The Godfather and the classics like Casablanca. Love those things. And North by Northwest. I can watch Hitchcock anytime. I think he's probably the master of it all. It's hard for me to say what my favorite film is, but those are some of my favorites. And I watch anything and everything, really. So if you're ever, want to watch a movie and you need someone to watch with, just find me on Facebook. I'll come over and I'll watch the movie with you, but and eat popcorn. Those are my 2 favorite things to do. So.
Awesome. Well,
that's it.
Marty, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
It's a pleasure having you swim in the bowl once again.
It's great. It's great here in the bowl. Now I'm going to go dry off and get back to my table.
All right.
All right,
good.
Sam. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.